What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and a Lamp podcast. I am here with Steve.
Hello.
As always. And today we're going to be talking about what we think of the play-in series so far. Just for posterity, we're recording this at about 5:20 in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time on August 6th. So to this date, only one series has been completed, and the latest playoff game is wrapping up now, which is the Vancouver Canucks game. They look like they're going to take Game 3 with a score of 3-0. The next playoff game is at 8. It is Toronto Columbus's tonight.
Ooh, that's a good one. Do you want to start there?
Why don't we start? Let's start with the completed series. We'll start with the Rangers, then we'll go to the Islanders. That way we can both get our negative emotions about our teams off our chest.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
And then we'll go on to the teams. We'll go on to some other teams. But let's start with the completed series, the only completed series to date. The New York Rangers fall in 3 games to the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts about this. Obviously, you have a lot of thoughts about this. As a Rangers fan, kind of give me, what do you think, what happened? What did you see on the ice?
Well, I think we honestly, obviously we've been watching a lot of these games together. So like we obviously have, we've been talking about it at length pretty much every day since the playoffs started because we've all watched the games. And like you made a good point the other day when you said like there's something to be said for the Rangers coming in red hot the way they did, right? I mean, they're coming in absolutely white hot, winning. They tied the Flyers for the most regulation wins through January. I mean, absolutely lights out. Mika Zibanejad had 41 goals in 57 games. And then the playoffs started. And the team didn't look... I mean, for what it's worth, every team came in cold, right? Like, they got one exhibition game. And for a young team like the Rangers who were playing well, maybe like, the time off really did them a disservice just in the fact that, like, they just weren't ready, maybe. Like, because I guess when you're playing, like, when you're winning games like that and you're playing every other day and you're coming in red hot like that, it's easy just to keep doing the things that you've been doing as opposed to, like, not, like, as opposed to coming in cold and having to essentially relearn all those things. So I think that was a contributing factor. And that should be a penalty. And not for nothing, like, I think... For what it's worth, like Artemi Panarin didn't look like Hart Trophy nominee Artemi Panarin. Zibanejad didn't look particularly great. Chris Kreider waited until Game 3 to even attempt to play when we were in a 2-0 hole.
Yeah. So the reason that I asked you, do you think there's maybe a bit of like an emotional letdown is just because, like I said, hello, thank you. There's something to be said for, like you said. Every team is coming into the playoffs at the same level of preparedness, essentially. Last year's St. Louis Blues team came in the hottest team in the league, and they won the Stanley Cup. Now, I really, if you took that Blues team on paper, were they the best team in the playoffs? Probably not. They were absolutely a solid team, but I really do think the Bruins roster was a little bit better. I would even argue that the Dallas Stars roster was probably a little bit better. But they were the hottest team coming in, and a lot of times you do see teams that come in hot succeeding. And there might have been a bit of an emotional letdown when the Rangers go from playing every other day in that playoff chase, being world beaters, proving everybody wrong who said that they shouldn't have even been close to the playoffs, going from that grind of surprising everybody and beating all these teams to taking 4 months off, and now everybody's coming in cold. Maybe there's a bit of an emotional letdown from that standpoint. Just before we continue on here, two questions, I guess, just about round robin in general before we go back to the Rangers, or not the round robin, the play-ins in general before we go back to New York Rangers. What do you think about the ice conditions, and what are you seeing about the officiating? Two topics that have come up a lot on hockey Twitter. So,
overall, like, in general, the speed of these games doesn't look particularly, like, it doesn't look as fast as we would expect it to look for playoff hockey, right? And that's to be expected with the 4-month layoff, but I think some of it also has to do with the fact that the ice in Toronto and Edmonton has been bad. Even like at noon Eastern time, when the first puck drops, that ice and that puck don't stop. Like, the puck doesn't stop bouncing off the ice, and it's rutted and pitted for from 30 seconds in. It's just rutted and pitted and destroyed. Like, I don't know what they're doing. according to the NHL, they said it would be. I know, obviously, like temperatures in August aren't exactly the same as mitigating temperatures in May or June, where it's a little warm. Like the warm end of a day is maybe 85 on a really hot day in May and June, whereas like the average day in August is like 85.
85 to 90. Yeah.
And like, granted, it's Toronto and Edmonton, which aren't exactly the hottest places in the world, but they still get hot. So it's like that's an issue, I guess. But the NHL said, at least from what I understand, the NHL said it would be easier to manage temperatures inside the building without fans because you wouldn't have to account for 18,000 people's body heat or like their breath or like anything like that, which led me to believe that the NHL might have an idea of how to make the ice seem pretty serviceable for August hockey, but it hasn't looked great.
No, and I agree. I think even the first games of the day, like you said, the noon games here and then the 2:30 games, which are noon games in Edmonton time, it just doesn't look very good. And it's really, I think for playoff hockey, the physicality's been there. Specifically in certain series, there's been a lot of physical action. But you just see the puck is bouncing, it's bobbling, it's wobbling, it's up on edge the whole time. It's very, very difficult for teams to get clean looks, and that, I think, part of that will go away the deeper we get into the playoffs, because as teams get eliminated, there's less games happening on those ice, which instead of going from 6 games a day, 3 games a day on each ice, you'll probably go to like 1 or 2, and you'll have more time in between flood and freeze. But
and then at some point, then eventually when we get to the conference final anyway, everything's going to be in Edmonton no matter what. So
and you'll have like two games
a day. They'll probably have 1 game a day, so they'll be able to treat the ice like they would every other day, like in every other playoff series.
So yeah, I kind of agree. The ice hasn't been great, and it's kind of been hampering a lot of the action.
I have an interesting question for you. Do you think the ice conditions are hampering some teams? Like, I'm not blaming the ice on the Pittsburgh Penguins not playing well and being in a hole that they're in, right? But do you think there's something to be said for like a team like Montreal, who's not exactly as particularly skilled as Pittsburgh, who just happens to play a more blue collar chip and chase hockey game? Do you think that being on the worst ice is actually being somewhat of an X factor for Montreal? Because Pittsburgh, because the puck is bouncing and rolling and the ice isn't great, they're really not coming through the neutral zone with as much speed as I would imagine they'd want, and I imagine it's making it a lot easier for Montreal to defend.
I think the ice definitely. So when it comes to certain teams, like obviously a high-flying skilled team like Toronto or Pittsburgh or the Lightning are going to have a harder time adjusting to that ice surface. I don't necessarily know if it's affecting a certain team, but what I will say is it makes getting that first goal way more important, because you've seen it specifically if you've watched the Islanders series. It's been actually fascinating. At the end of the game, the Islanders, when they were up in games 1 and 2, when they were dumping it down, that puck was dying well before the goal line, so they were avoiding icings when they were dumping the puck out when the Panthers net was empty. And that, in a regular season game, that's probably an icing, like almost every time. And the Panthers were doing it too. When the Islanders were down, the Panthers were just dumping it off the boards, and there was so much slush that the puck was dying before the goal line, wasting 10, 15 seconds on each jump in instead of it being an icing. I think it makes being up late in the game and getting that first goal way more important. Obviously, you always want to score the first goal, but it makes coming back way harder than it should be, because the teams that are down can afford to play that blue collar, like dump and chase hockey, whereas when you're down, or the teams that are up can afford to play that way. When you're down, you have to make something happen.
Yeah, you have to try things. I mean, I guess, okay, so I might have phrased that wrong, but I just was wondering, like, in terms of, like,
well, it's a fair question,
because there's a considerable skill gap specifically in terms of Montreal Pittsburgh is I think the reason I picked it, because like for all intents and purposes the rest of these Eastern Conference series are pretty even. It's definitely a fair question, and there's something to be said for a team that relies on fancy moves or high flying skilled moves like the Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe, where they're a puck possession team where it's harder to possess the puck because it's bouncing so much. Right, and you can't particularly use your speed because you're catching ruts left and right, and you're not skating as cleanly as you would like. So I think, from what I've noticed, teams are adjusting to it. It's a little like the games have become a little like more tight checking. Like even the other night in Pittsburgh Montreal, like Pittsburgh was playing a more defensive game because they couldn't, like with the ice, I guess they just really couldn't try to play as fast as they wanted. So I wonder if it's just like an unintended consequence that's giving some teams the benefit of the doubt. I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from what Montreal is doing right now. I'm not trying to use this as an excuse for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like I said, it's just the only two teams I could think of in the Eastern Conference that had such a considerable gap in talent.
Yeah, and we'll certainly get to that Montreal series. Before, like I said, last thing before we go back to the Rangers series, the officiating. What do you think about the officiating so far? Because I'm not a fan.
Neither am I. And I understand... Oh, roasted.
That was nasty.
I understand Kevin Hayes with the pass to Sanheim. But, I mean, I understand that like the referees are also trying to get back into game shape. They also had 4 months, 5 months off, you know? But that's it's hard because it feels like for like the first period and a half of a lot of these hockey games, they'll call everything and anything in sight, and then when the third period, when the chips are down and the game matters, they're not calling anything. Which, like, understand, like, playoff hockey generally is very little penalties, right? You usually see teams go like, maybe at the high end you might see like 6-7 penalties in a game.
Yeah.
Unless there's something like absolutely ridiculous, like a guy gets blown up and there's a fight, and the game gets nasty, right? But like in the Ranger, like specifically to tie it into what we're talking about, the Ranger Carolina series, like
there's 14 penalties in the first game.
Yeah, there was like 13 penalties in game 2. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, and it was like, and listen, if you're gonna call that many penalties, they better be penalties. Yeah. They better be real. But the amount of times they let things go where like guys would absolutely hack, like on both sides, like Rangers and Carolina players would hack at each other and really try to get in there because they're playing to win, playing for keeps. They wouldn't call it, and then there'd be a little ticky-tack, like whack on the hands, like a little love tap, and the guy'd end up in the box for 2 minutes. And it's like, I really just don't understand what they're looking for.
I just don't think... Sure, okay, technically, the play-in series are both playoffs and they're not playoffs. Technically, they're counting for playoff stats for players, but also technically they're a qualifying series. So they're not... like, if you win the first round, you're not considered you won the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah,
you're considered you
they exist in this, like, weird, nebulous, like, woo
So the players
state.
are getting playoff points for it. It's not counting... The teams can say, we made the playoffs, but they also can't claim they won. It's weird. But the point is, this is playoff hockey. There can't be 14 penalty minutes or 14 penalties, so like 28 penalty minutes. There can't be almost a period and a half worth of penalties unless they're actual penalties.
Like, if you're going to tell me, like, if this was the 96 Red Wings Avalanche series and you were telling me there were 14 penalties, it's like, yeah, because they're trying to kill, those guys are trying to maim each other the entire time. But, like, Ranger, Carolina, like, those games, yeah, were they physical? Sure, they were physical, but, like, there was no reason to call 14 penalties in one game.
No, so I've not been a very big fan of the officiating thus far.
But like I said, like the biggest problem is the inconsistency in what they're calling. Like traditionally in playoff hockey, like stick checks, the obstruction penalties, the holding, like they're a little looser on because like you're fighting for every inch of ice you get. But it seems to vary from not even from game to game, but from period to period what they're going to call and how they're going to call the game. So as a player, it's got to be incredibly frustrating because what was a penalty not even 1 game ago? What was a penalty 15 minutes ago in the first period? Isn't a penalty now. So it's like, yeah, you might have gotten called for a little ticky-tack slash in the first, and you think like you're owed one, but the referee's not looking to call anything for the rest of the game because he just called 8 penalties in 1 period.
Yeah.
So it's like...
I think that's something the NHL needs to get on.
And not for nothing, these are the best... These are the... Like, because they submit the reports on the officials all season long. These are the highest rated officials in the NHL. These are like the best, conceivably the best of the best, Like Wes McCauley's there and Yves Saint Laurent, not Yves Saint Laurent, that's a clothing brand, but Saint Laurent is there.
Francois Saint
Laurent, yeah. Like, these are like the best of the best. And it's like, even they're having a hard time not even keeping control of these games, trying to figure out how they want to control these games.
Yeah, and it's got to be fixed.
And like I can understand I can understand to some degree they're nervous about these games because they don't know what they're gonna get. They're gonna get like, I mean, game 1 you really realistically these teams really didn't know. You didn't know if they were gonna be bloodbaths or whatever, and especially in specifically Winnipeg. Calgary, like that's a series where like if I was a referee I could see being scared and calling a lot of penalties because of what happened to Mark Scheifele, and I'm not blaming Matt Tkachuk, I'm just saying like as a referee, that's a series where you see something like that and then you go to referee any of those other games, you're like, we can't let that happen.
Try to keep a lid on it.
But you can't fix a problem that isn't there. A lot of these other series have been honestly really tame. The only ones that have gotten really nasty are Winnipeg, Calgary because of the Scheifele injury, and the Line injury. And
Vancouver, Montreal.
Vancouver, Minnesota's been,
Vancouver, Minnesota. They got pretty nasty with each other today.
Yeah, and they've been pretty nasty. So I just the NHL's got to figure out what they want to do with the officiating. Do they want, because everybody wants power plays because they're exciting. They lead to a lot more goals by like percentage just in general. But half of a playoff game can't be on the power play. No, absolutely not. Half a regular season game can't be on the power play.
Right.
That's unacceptable in a game in October, and a game in January, and a game in April, May, or June. Like, it just can't happen. And
especially in a short series.
Right. And for what it's worth, I really believe that these guys are playing at such a high level that there really aren't 14 penalties to call on a game on these guys. They're not. Like, it's not the 70s where, like, the Broad Street Bullies are just elbowing Garnet Hathaway, just absolutely got a pizza served to him. But, like, it's not it's not like the Big Bad Bruins or the, Broad Street Bullies who are going out there and fighting guys for every single, period. There's, like, 3 fights. So it's like, okay, yeah, you're going to get, like, 13 penalties added up after a while. But, like, these guys play this game at such a high level that I refuse to believe that, like, they are just taking 13 penalties, both sides.
A game. No. So going back to the Rangers series, obviously we just kind of talked about a lot of power plays, a lot of penalty kills. What do you think ultimately was the Rangers' issue, or was there a Rangers issue, or was the Hurricanes just playing well? What do you think? Like, give me your overall synopsis of the series.
I think realistically, the Rangers' undoing was really, like, which is ironic, was their inability to score. I mean, this is a team that had the Rangers are a solid possession team too. Like, once they have the puck, they're good with the puck. But their bread and butter all season was the same as Colorado's, was coming in off the rush with a lot of speed. When you have Artemi Panarin skating, like, he's hard to handle. And I think, again, not blaming the ice, but the conditions on the ice and stacked up with Carolina playing a really suffocating defense and also a really heavy forecheck, which prevented the Rangers from leaving the zone clean. They just they got chances, they didn't capitalize, and honestly, a couple times they just got straight up robbed by either James Reimer or Peter Mrazek. Like, they generated enough opportunities to win hockey games, they just didn't put them in the net, whereas Carolina was putting them in the net.
Lundqvist in Game 1, Shesterkin was not available for Game 1 and 2. Lundqvist in Game 1, Lundqvist in Game 2 instead of Georgiev. Do you have any issue with that?
I mean, no. Listen, it's Henrik Lundqvist. If anybody is based entirely on merit and career alone previous to this season, has earned the right to start 1 or 2 last playoff games for the team, because let's be honest, those are probably his last games as a New York Ranger, it's Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, king of New York, right? All-time wins leader, all-time shutout leader, top 10 in NHL wins. Like, you can't tell the guy he hasn't earned it just based on career merit alone and his record against Carolina through his whole career. He's almost undefeatable. I mean, they beat him in 2 here, but through his career, he's been pretty much unbeatable against the Carolina Hurricanes. So I don't have an issue with it. I think he played good enough to win game 1. The Rangers didn't. He played good enough. He didn't play. I think the team played better in Game 2. And he played a little worse. He didn't play well enough to give the team a chance to win. And the biggest issue was he coughed up 2 early goals. Like, he put the Rangers behind early. And I'm saying he did it because I hate blaming the goaltender, but on some of the first 2 goals in both games were short side under his blocker from almost no angle. It's a save he's got to make, and it's a save 4 or 5 years ago Henrik Lundqvist would have made every single time.
Right.
And I think it's just by nature he's just old. And I thought Shesterkin looked really good in Game 3. I mean, it's a shame that, he wasn't available in Game 1 or 2, but that being said, I think Henrik Lundqvist deserved the shot. I mean, why not? For all intents and purposes, the Rangers shouldn't have been there anyway, so why not give Hank a shot?
Yeah.
The second youngest roster in the NHL, and he's the only one with any real playoff experience outside of Mark Stahl.
Yeah, and ultimately the goaltending I don't think is what ended the Rangers season. If from an outside observer, someone who has, again, watched a ton of Rangers games.
But has realistically no stake in the series.
Right. Which, again, like, when we talk about the Islanders, like, I'm going to be biased as well. So the thing is, I agree with you. I think your analysis is pretty spot on. I think it was really the biggest thing for me was the forecheck. I think the Hurricanes' forecheck really put a lot of pressure on the Rangers' young defense. And Grant, like you said, most of this roster has no playoff experience, and not that the roster of the Hurricanes really has a ton either.
But they made it to a conference final last year.
Right, there's a significant number who have at least had, if nothing else, that one deep run to the conference final, where they played some pretty good teams. They played a Stanley Cup champion in Washington Capitals. They played a really good defensive, tight-checking team in the Islanders, and of course, they really struggled against the Bruins. But the Bruins are, for all intents and purposes, a championship-caliber team.
They're the second best team in the NHL.
Yeah,
and for what it's worth, with Carolina anyway, is like, I think there's something to be said for those guys going as deep as they did last year. And playing a team like the Bruins and seeing what it took what the Bruins were willing to do to win those games. I mean, the experience was a lot, and I think the Rangers will be better for having this experience. I mean, a guy like Adam Fox, sure, 3 and out isn't the same as going, picking
3
up,
rounds deep.
Yeah, picking up 8 wins and going up against the Bruins in the conference final, but they played a good team, honestly a really good team. A team that, if you ask, we've talked about this too, the team like you and I agree, if they had a better goalie, would be a Stanley Cup contender just based on that defense alone. But outside of that, it's like Adam Fox looked shaky. He looked starstruck because, again, he has no playoff experience. He's never done it before, and it showed. I think it goes either one of two ways when you have a lot of young guys in positions like that. Either they're going to come out and be gangbusters and be world beaters because they don't care.
There's no pressure on them.
They don't know any different. They're just going to go out there and play. Or in the Rangers' case, they chafed under the pressure because they put, outside of the media putting pressure on a lot of these guys, I imagine the players put a lot of pressure on themselves. Specifically, a guy like.
Whoops, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Specifically, a guy like Adam Fox or somebody like.
I think you could even point to a guy who has playoff experience and say that maybe he put a little bit of pressure on himself. Like Artemi Panarin probably was trying to live up to that contract that he signed.
And for what it's worth, he might have been trying too hard.
Yeah,
he didn't look good.
And the ironic part about this whole thing was really, I think, the biggest, the two biggest factors of the Rangers not coming out of this series, like I predicted them to, was the Hurricanes forecheck, but also the thing that we've been, belaying for the better part of 2 seasons now is the Hurricanes goaltending was really good. I mean, James Reimer stole that third game. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he stole that third game. The Rangers should have had 6 or 7 goals by the end of the second period.
And he had a wide open net, and they hit his stick. Like, he threw his stick out. Like, was it lucky? Yeah, but he put himself in a position to make the save.
And Hurricanes defense did all that without Dougie Hamilton.
And Brett Pesce.
Which is pretty scary. So, overall, I still think this is a successful season for the Rangers. Obviously, would they have liked to have played more than 4 games in the bubble? Absolutely. And, again, I was one of the ones that predicted the Rangers to win this series. But, ultimately, it's a successful season. They were in the playoff hunt up until the end, which is exactly where we both said they should be. And they'll come out of this series with a little bit of playoff experience, just to taste a little nibble of playoff experience, and they'll be better off in the long run.
And not for nothing, now they have a shot at the first overall pick.
Right.
So, there is some sort of strange silver lining here that is, maybe we didn't do as well as we thought we should or could, but maybe we get Alexei Lafreniere at the end of the day.
Just to put a bow on this series before we move on, does this series make you feel any different about the Hurricanes as a Stanley Cup contender? A little bit better, a little bit worse?
I still kind of feel the same way. I still just, as much as their goaltending looked good, I still don't trust it against a better team. Not for nothing, there are better teams in the playoffs than the Rangers. The Rangers didn't finish in first place. They didn't win a President's Trophy. If they run into a team like Boston, where I think their forwards and their defense match up pretty well against the Boston Bruins, the Bruins blow them out of the water in goaltending. I mean, they have Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak.
Right.
And Tampa Bay, you have Vasilevsky. At this point, there are so many good goaltenders in the playoffs that I just don't feel confident in their goalie being able to win out a game. There are so many goalies on these other Eastern Conference teams that can steal games for them that I'm not confident enough that Carolina's goaltending could steal a game if the team doesn't play well.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better just seeing how well they defended without their top 2 defensemen. Well, not top 2, without one of their top defensemen and a really solid middle defenseman. I feel a little bit better about their defense now, but same situation where against a more experienced team, against a team that has been there, done that, won't get frustrated when the goals aren't going in. I still don't think they're a championship caliber team. I think they're a bubble Stanley Cup team.
I think if they get hot enough, they can make a Stanley Cup final. I mean,
yeah. So we'll move on to the other New York series here before we get into some of the other stuff. So right now the Islanders are up 2-1 in terms of the series on the Florida Panthers. There's a lot to talk about in this series, but at the same time, it's also kind of interesting because it's more or less what a lot of people expected. A healthy Islanders roster is playing good defensive hockey, and really they should have won Game 3 if they can just stay out of the box. I mean, Florida has 3 even strength goals the entire series. Every other goal has been on the power play.
And Florida's power play has been lethal all season. So it's like it's one of those things where it's like it can't be a surprise to you that their power play is good. Especially when the top unit has Mike Hoffman, Alexander Barkov, and Jonathan Huberdeau on it. Like
and I think a lot of it is what it's coming down to is we're really seeing that, when the Islanders have a fully complete, healthy roster with Adam Pelech in the lineup, Casey Cizikas and Matt Martin in the lineup, they can win 2-1 hockey games, 3-2 hockey games. Game 3, we saw a little bit of the issues that plagued them where they weren't converting on their chances because they had a couple 2-on-1s, a couple breakaways, and they just weren't converting, which is something we've seen all season with the team.
Right.
And they had a couple brain cramps, which I really wasn't a fan of. Like 2 of the penalties in Game 3, they took too many men penalties, and then Varlamov played the puck in the pizza slice, and they scored early in the third, and they ran away with it after that. I think Bobrovsky's looked really good. I don't think any of these games are on him. I think Florida's offense is not surprisingly ineffective because the Islanders are a really good defensive team, but they're just not. They're not generating as many high-scoring opportunities as they could.
For what it's worth, no, I keep saying for what it's worth, but I mean, you're right. This is Alexander Barkov, arguably a top 3 center in the NHL, and Huberdeau, a top 5 winger in the NHL. You'd think that even though they're playing against a suffocating defense, they'd still be finding something. These are the best. These are the best of the best. These are These are the elite of the elite, right? So it's they're still going to get sniffs, and you think they'd still be at least doing something. But I feel like Barkov has been kind of invisible this whole series. I really don't notice him on the ice. I don't notice Mike Hoffman doing anything, and Mike Hoffman's a guy that they need.
Outside of the power play, they're pretty much invisible. Yeah. I mean, 3 even strength goals is not going to cut it.
And one of which is from Brian Boyle.
And one of which came 6 seconds after a power play when Bo was still getting into the play. So really, if you wanted to get technical, it's really 2.5 even strength goals.
I mean, yeah.
Do you agree with my assessment on Bobrovsky? Do you like the way that he's playing?
I think he this goes back to what we were saying earlier in the season about he still looks small. He still changed the way he plays for some reason, but right now he's playing. He looks like 2016 Sergei Bobrovsky or 2019 Sergei Bobrovsky. Really. I mean, he looks like a whole new player, and the shame is the team isn't playing that well in front of him. If this Florida team was playing good, which they should because that roster on paper is good, they should have been in a divisional spot this season. I really believe that.
I put them second in the division.
I had them in third, so it's we both saw them as something good. So not to say that the season was all on him either, because it realistically it wasn't. They didn't play well either, but
their defense isn't elite or anything. I think it's just kind of passable.
It's serviceable, and with Bobrovsky playing to his capabilities behind them, I mean, there's a lot. A great goaltender can erase a lot of the mistakes of an okay defense. He can just swallow pucks up like it's nobody's business, and right now it's kind of what he's doing. They're making a lot of brain cramps. They're serving up a lot of pizzas right through the middle of the ice and turning it over, and unforced errors too, more than anything. And Florida, and he's looked really good. He's answered the bell on almost every single one. Did they lose the one game? What was it, 4-2 or something? There are a couple.
It was game 2 I believe was a score of 4-2, but the Islanders also scored 2 power play goals in that game, which it's hard to really blame power play goals on the goalie a lot of times.
Well, especially with the Islanders are moving the puck well at this point. So I don't know. If I were other teams, I'd be worried if I saw Bobrovsky heating up like that, because we saw what he did last year when he heated up, and I mean, he knocked off the
Tampa Bay Lightning.
The 62-win Tampa Bay Lightning in 4 straight.
Yeah, I think, to really kind of we'll wrap it up. Do I feel good about the Islanders going into Game 4? yes, if we can stay out of the box. But the thing that worries me is a lot of these penalties aren't like you take a slash while you're trying to defend a guy, or you take a high stick while you're trying to win a puck battle. It's just unforced brain cramps, and you don't really see that from a Barry Trotz team all that often.
I mean, there's been a lot of just unforced errors in general in these playoffs, and I think a lot of it has to do with guys shaking off rust that they've, the 4 months of rust. But even a guy like Connor McDavid, who has 5 goals through 3 games, still doesn't look like Connor McDavid. Like, he doesn't look like the guy. He served up in game 1, or was it game 1? And the first 2 goals that Chicago scored were honestly his fault. He turned it over. It was an unforced turnover, and he lost the faceoff and was lazy getting into a play. And I've seen that a lot in a lot of these series. Like, for some reason, a lot of these guys just there's just unforced errors left and right.
The thought connection is just not as strong as it was.
Yeah.
So, do I think the Islanders will win the series? It's hard to say. Like, I don't like being cynical about my team, but I've seen it happen so many times this year where it's these are games that they should win. And the question I asked you about, did the Rangers beat themselves? Did Carolina beat them? I genuinely feel like in Game 3 the Islanders did beat themselves. Two power play goals for the Panthers on complete brain cramp, unforced penalties. If they stay out of the box, I feel good. The problem with that is then you're also relying on we have to convert more of our chances, which is something that was a real big issue for us all year. Do I feel good? It's hard. The problem, again, with a low-scoring team like the Islanders is it really does feel like every goal that goes in is the game.
Oh, yeah.
It genuinely feels like if you go down 2-0, it feels like the game is over.
Well, it's funny because the Rangers, all season long, the Rangers had the opposite problem, right, where they could score their way out of jams if they had to.
So you guys would go up 5-2, and you're like, well, this game's not over yet.
No, yeah, or they'd be down 4-0, and you're like, all right, well, yeah. In the back of your head, you're always gonna say, well, the game's over, but in the back of your head, you're kind of like, maybe it's not. I don't know. And they could make it interesting. Whereas the Islanders give up 4 goals, it's kind of like, oh man, all right.
I think we were our winning percentage was 25% if we gave up more than 2 goals this year. So it's hard, especially against a team like the Panthers, who their offense could break out at any moment.
I got a question for you. What do you think of the goaltending? How has the Islanders' goaltending been what you'd expected? Especially behind that team.
I think Varlamov's looked great. Outside of Game 3, the playing the puck in the pizza slice, which I don't want to say that was the turning point of the game, but it was very early in the third. We were tied 1-1. We had come off a really good second period, and he first of all, he shouldn't have been out of his net because we had a defenseman back, and he's been overplaying the puck this series a little bit. And an unforced error, he touches the puck in a pizza slice, and Mike Hoffman blows a one-timer by him. It's 2-1, and then 3 minutes later, Brian Boyle blows one by him, and it's 3-1. You could feel the momentum shift after that. Outside of that, I think he's played fine. I would like to see him stay in his net a little bit more. His puck handling this series has been a bit questionable, and I want to see him use his angles a bit more. He's gotten caught deep in his crease a couple times, but I think Varlamov's played fine. I really don't see an issue. I don't really see a need to go to Greiss at this point.
Do you think they'll go to Greiss in the back? Did you already play the back-to-back? Okay,
Game 3 was the back-to-back. If he comes out in Game 4 and has another brain cramp or gets blown out of the water, I could see us go to Greiss. Because that's, really playing the puck in the zone. That's a mental thing. He wasn't checked in at that point, and you need to be locked in.
It's like, Pekka Rinne said it. When he used to be out of games where he felt like he wasn't in it, he used to play the puck a ton to stay engaged because he felt like it kept him in the game. So, there's something to be said for maybe he felt like he wasn't engaged enough and he wanted to try and get involved, and he just chose the wrong time at the wrong slice of ice.
As easy as it is for goalies to play behind strong defenses, it's also hard because if you're only seeing 20 shots over 60 minutes as opposed to, I think that's part of the issue with, sometimes you see these goalies just let in these soft ones. What are they doing? If you're only seeing 4 or 5 shots a period, it's hard to stay mentally engaged. And of course that's your job, but you get cold. When a goalie's seeing 40 to 50 shots in a game, on a high end, if you're playing for a bad team, you're locked in the whole game.
Well, because every other minute there's going to be 2 or 3 pucks coming right at you, and you have to make a save. Whereas like in a game like like the Islanders, a guy like Varlamov might get bored. Not
the
bored.
Panthers put up 23 shots in the third game, as did we. So like both goalies. And the thing is, there's a lot of pressure associated with that because if you let in a bad one on a low-scoring team, that's hard to get back. It's not easy.
It's also like it's way more noticeable if you give up a bad one on less shots, because it's like if you give up a bad one but you get shelled like with 47 shots, it's like, all right, well, I mean, he stopped 46 other ones, what can you say? But it's like you only faced 20 shots and you let in one and it was kind of bad, so like of course we're gonna remember that one because it was bad, and it was, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. So going into Game 4, we'll have to see. I feel okay, not great. Where do you want to go next?
Wherever.
We have 6 other series to talk about. Why don't we talk about... Let's get the only other series that's only 1-1 so far out of the way. Every other series has played at least 3. This team has only played 2. We'll go to Toronto-Columbus. They're playing their third game tonight. Currently 1-1. Toronto and Columbus are tied. Interestingly enough, Columbus puts up a shutout in Game 1. Toronto puts up a shutout in Game 2. What are you seeing from this series?
It's it's kind of what you expected, right? Like John Tortorella's Blue Jackets are playing a really heavy defensive game, and they're healthy. They have both Seth Jones and Zach Werenski back in the lineup. And Eunice Korpisalo has been good. I mean,
he's been really good.
I mean, good's an understatement. He's been great. He's been really, really great for them. And, I mean, the Maple Leafs are kind of look like we thought they would. Like, they're having trouble scoring. They pitched a shutout, but, I mean, it wasn't exactly against, like... The Blue Jackets' offense isn't world-beating. It's okay. It's enough to win them games, but, like, their bread and butter is stopping the other team from scoring. And they're honestly... And even in the game they lost, managed to hold Toronto to only 2 goals. They only lost 2-0. Or 3-0 with an empty net, I think.
Yeah. And I will say a large part of that, a significantly large part of that, was Eunice Korpisalo. Like, the Toronto Maple Leafs had an unbelievable number of chances. But on a team like the Blue Jackets, you rely on your goalie to make saves like that. What are you seeing out of Toronto's Big Four? Tavares, Matthews, Marner, and Nylander.
I mean, Matthews has looked good. I mean, he had a goal the other night. And he obviously got shut out in Game 1, but he had a goal the other night. Marner looked all right. I mean, you get what you expect out of them, right? They're generating chances. They're skating. They're not scoring as much as you'd like to see them score, but there's something to be said for like that being out of their control to a certain degree because Eunice Korpisalo is playing so well. It's, the ultimate equalizer is a great goaltender, and if a guy's playing red hot, then it doesn't matter how great, doesn't matter how much money you spend on the best forwards in the league, he could at any point put up a shutout, and he did it.
So Game 2, very scary scene towards the end of the game. Jake Muzzin goes down kind of awkwardly, hits the side of his head on somebody's knee, ends up going to the hospital. He's released. He's back in the bubble, but because of protocol and honestly probably because of his injury, he's not going to be available for the rest of the play-in series. They've ruled him ineligible for the rest of the play-in series.
I thought that was really interesting because, like, not that they ruled him ineligible because obviously he was very clearly in some sort of distress on the ice, but it didn't look all that bad. Like the fall and then the collision didn't look that it's like we talk about hockey all the time, you and I, when we watch games. Like, you'll see guys hit each other 35 miles an hour in the open ice, and they both get up and skate away, and they're fine. But, like, Jake Muzzin, did he take a little bit of a cross-check? Yeah, again, but it's playoff hockey. It wasn't a nasty cross-check from Dubois. Dubois was just trying to put him down.
There's a puck battle in the corner.
Yeah, he wanted to put him down. I think the real issue was once he fell, he just continued sliding towards him, and then he couldn't protect himself, and that guy's leg hit him in the face.
Yeah, so what ended up happening was he went to the hospital. They said he lost feeling in his extremities for a brief amount of time. But by the time he got to the hospital, he said he got it all back. So I'm assuming it was probably a pinched nerve.
Even a concussion, a severe enough concussion can cause you to lose feeling in extremities. So
it's probably either nerve damage or concussion. But because, I don't think he'd be healthy enough to play in the rest of the series anyway, but also just because of the way the protocol works, he now has to quarantine for a certain amount of time because he was outside the bubble. what did the Toronto Maple Leafs do to replace really arguably the only defensive defenseman on their roster?
I mean, I guess you have to elevate somebody to try to play, right? You have to try to get a guy like Jacob Hull, or maybe not Jacob Hull,
Justin Hull,
or what is his? Oh my God, why can't I? Travis Dermott, somebody like that might have to step up and play more big minutes. Along with, I mean, you're gonna need Morgan Riley to really be your best defenseman, because you're paying him to be your best defenseman. He's been your best defenseman, but now you really, chips are down. He's got to do it all now.
Yeah, because there's two different ways you can handle it. You can either, like you said, you can either try to have the team rally around it and play team defense, or the other way you can go about it is now you really lean into your offense. You go, well, listen, like, this is it. We got to score now. You know, if you're not Kyle Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, are you leaning into that defense a little bit, or are you saying, like, listen, like, we have to score. We don't have a choice now?
I mean, I think regardless of the injury or not, I think if he was still in the lineup, I still think if you're Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, you kind of have to start trying to lean into your offense, because that's really where you, for all intents and purposes, that's where you outclass the Columbus Blue Jackets in almost every single position. I mean, you have 2 top 10 centers in the league. You have probably arguably the best winger in the NHL. You have William Nylander. You have Zach Hyman. I mean, and even up and down the lineup, you have Andreas Janssen. You have Mikheyev, Kasperi Kapanen. I mean, Jason Spezza had been playing pretty well for them. So your strength isn't on defense if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs at all. Like, literally at all. Your strength is in your goaltending and your offense. And I think at this point, if you're playing at what is essentially an anemic offensive team, you have to try and just blow this game open. If you can manage to get 2-3 quick ones in the first period, you pretty much put Columbus out of the game. Not to say I don't think they can come back, but like, you've put yourself in a position to just ride that game to the end.
Well, you're forcing them to play a game that they don't want to play.
Right, you're forcing them to have to skate with you, and there are very few teams in the NHL that can skate with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and their name is probably the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Boston Bruins. Like, yeah. Those are about the only teams that can actually keep up with the Maple Leafs when they're skating. So
with all that in mind, Jake Muzzin injuries out for the rest of the series, they're tied 1-1. How do you feel about the series going forward? Do you still think, because you predicted the Maple Leafs to win it, as did I, do you still feel good about the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I mean, I still feel good about the Maple Leafs just because I feel good about that forward group. I really don't want to bet against that forward group, because Austin Matthews with one shot changes everything. Puts the puck in the back of the net, and now the game's different, you know? So they have a couple of guys who are like legitimate game breakers in that, like, no matter what happens on the ice, they get one clean look and the game's over. So, I don't know. I don't feel any better about the Maple Leafs, that's for sure. I honestly probably feel worse about the Maple Leafs now without Jake Muzzin. But I still feel confident enough in that forward group to say that they'll beat the Columbus Blue Jackets. But that being said, the Columbus Blue Jackets have proven a lot to me. Like, they've proven a lot that they can handle, without Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky, can handle an offensive juggernaut and keep them in check.
Yeah.
I mean, like, again, you're never going to eliminate Austin Matthews' chance or Mitch Marner's chances entirely, because it just doesn't work like that. Even the best defenseman in the league is still going to cough up some chances against the best offensive players in the league. It's a give and take, right? Like, one time, coming down the boards one time, you get the better of him. The next time, he gets the better of you. It's whatever. But it's mad about managing those chances, and I think Columbus is doing a really good job of making sure that Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner don't get a lot of those high-quality chances. Are they still effective players on the ice? Of course they are. They're always going to be. It's not like it's not like in the Florida series where, like, I don't notice them on the ice. Like, every time Matthews touches the puck, it's like, oh, he's on the ice, he's doing something. But they've done a good enough job of making sure that, like, he stays to the outside, or the chances he gets are one and done and it's over. So yeah, they're mitigating the damage in a really effective way, and that could be the difference maker, and that could knock the Maple Leafs out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think whoever the goalie coach in Columbus is deserves
some kind of
raise, because it's really weird. If you watch Korpisalo play, he plays like Bobrovsky did.
Oh, yeah.
And Merzlikins obviously came relatively out of nowhere for them this year. I think whoever is there is doing something right.
I mean, Korpisalo has always reminded me a lot of Bobrovsky ever since, like, they've played together, right? And I think there's something to be said for, like, maybe whatever the goalie coach tried with Bobrovsky was like, oh, well, he won 2 Vezina trophies this way, so
it's working.
Why change it, right? I mean, it's like Benoit Allaire. Like, a lot of the goaltenders that come through the Rangers organization start to remind me of Henrik Lundqvist.
And why would you change it?
Right. I mean, Igor's just jerking for like he's a better puck handler, but the way he's squaring up to the puck and the way he's playing in his net remind me of Henrik Lundqvist.
Yeah,
He's square, he's strong. I mean, so in terms of like Korpisalo, like he's low, he's wide, and he's playing really fast, aggressive, like athletic goaltending, like hockey. And he looks like Bobrovsky. I don't know.
And the Columbus Blue Jackets, like you said, they're doing a great job against the Leafs. I still think the Leafs will win, but am I going to be a little less surprised if they don't now without Jake Muzzin? Yeah, because he was really their only true to form stay-at-home defensive defenseman.
With all that being said, though, we would like to wish Jake Muzzin all the best.
Absolutely.
With whatever the injury is, because we're not gonna find out. He's just deemed unfit to play. But whether it's a concussion or a neck injury or whatever, we wish him the best because it's scary. I mean, like watching the stretcher have to come out onto the ice and the doctors have to come out, like that was scary. I really thought he was gonna skate away from it. I thought he was gonna get up and be a little shaken up and be like, all right, but he didn't move. It was scary when he rolled over and didn't move. I was like, oh no.
And it's worse without fans because you hear the doctors talking, you hear the radios going, and it's just this really eerie, like weird.
I mean, you could see the visible concern on like the players' faces on the ice. Like they were all kind of even like the Blue Jackets were like, oh man, like Dubois I imagine felt awful because not that it's his fault, but he's the cross check is the reason that he ended up in that situation. Again, wasn't malicious, didn't mean to do it on purpose. You try to take a guy out when you can in the playoffs, and it was a normal play, but you still got to feel a little bad when like it ends up with some sort of freak injury at the end of it where he just gets like kneed in the head. Like I don't.
Yeah. So, like you said, we hope Jake Muzzin's doing all right. He's back in the bubble now, so he's back with his team.
We'd like to see him. If he's good to go by the first round. I mean, that'd be great news for not only like the Maple Leafs but also just in general.
Yeah. Again, assuming the Maple Leafs make it past the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, which they might not. I mean, who knows?
We'll see Game 2 tonight for those guys. Let's stay in the East. We'll wrap up the Eastern Conference with the last play-in series. The Montreal Canadiens, the 12th seed, are up 2-1 on the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I know you have a lot to say about one particular Montreal Canadian, so I'll let you have the stage. Let's hear it.
I think you mean Carey Price is up 2 games to 1 on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean,
I know there's one defenseman that you really want to talk
Petrie?
about.
Yeah, man. Jeff Petrie's always been solid. I've always thought Jeff Petrie was like a solid number 2, number 3 guy on a team, right? Like he's not your Shea Weber, he's not your matchup lockdown guy, but he's smooth, he's clean, and he's proving it right now. He's got an overtime winner, an absolute snipe last night.
Absolute nip from the goal line.
He looking like Paul Coffey out there from the goal line, short side. Like what? Why? My first question is, just real quick, why did he pick that shot? Like, if you're on that angle, usually you shoot for the legs, you shoot for something to make him like cough it up, handcuff him.
He was probably like, "Yo, dude, I got this."
He looked Matt Murray in the face and was like, "Yep, we're doing it," and just blew it over his head. Like,
he might honestly, and I don't say this to be like, oh, look at how good my team is. He honestly might have watched film of that Islanders series last year, and Matt Murray had a really difficult time with those short side shots with a right-hander from the goal line. He really struggled with that.
I mean, Jordan Eberle got him on it, twice?
Got it on it, yeah, pretty much. The one was a 2-on-1 and one was just a rip from the goal line. Like, that's a goal that Matt Murray has given up several times before.
It's a goal, for all intents and purposes, it's a goal he has to save. I mean, you can't let in a short side snipe from the goal. Like, again, if Connor McDavid comes over and beats you short side over the shoulder like that, like, what are you going to say? He's the best player on earth. Like, you can't be mad. But when, like I said, I like Jeff Petrie a lot, but when Jeff Petrie does it to you or Jordan Eberle does it twice,
he's not exactly Austin Matthews.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Do you think Tristan Jarry gets a shot?
I was just gonna say Game 3 tonight, for what we understand. I mean, this is, or not tonight, the next game. That's do or die for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's dissect this a little bit, because is it all Matt Murray? Is it all Carey Price? The question is, because let's be honest, last night in Game 3, the Pittsburgh Penguins had one even strength goal. One. They scored 2 on the power play.
They were winning that hockey game. They were winning 3-1 at one point, and blew
that's
the lead.
A lead you cannot choke. That's a lead you can't show to a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs or the
Montreal Canadiens, which again is a team that offensively is more anemic than them. I mean, their best players are Max Domi, Thomas Tatar, and Jonathan Drouin, and I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I like those players a lot, but when you're matched up with Malkin and Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel,
what's going on with Evgeny Malkin?
He looks terrible. I don't know. He really doesn't look very good.
Is it just that he's not skating? Is he not using his body? Because he's been completely invisible to me this entire series.
He looks kind of lazy, honestly. It looks like his feet aren't moving, and when he's in the play, he doesn't look very engaged. I don't know. Whereas Sid, on the other hand, looks very engaged. Sid looks like he wants to win. But
Sid looks good. Zucker looks good.
I mean,
Gensel
looks good.
I haven't noticed Malkin almost at all.
I don't think he has any points. I think he might have a couple assists maybe, but like it's nothing like crazy. Like he might be like a couple secondary assists. He doesn't really look. I don't know. He doesn't look like Evgeny Malkin. He doesn't look like, arguably the world's best second line center.
Yeah, and okay, so I don't want this to come off as us being like, well, the Penguins are just shooting themselves in the foot. I'm not going to take anything away from Carey Price. The guy is absolutely on another level. This is not level 11. This is like level 15.
Carey Price has found seventh gear, man. Like,
he is unbelievable. I mean, between him and Korpisalo, the Eastern Conference has seen some absolutely stunning, breathtaking, next-level goaltending.
Well, I think it was in Game 1 or Game 2 with the Montreal series, and Carey Price made like 4 or 5 saves in succession in a flurry.
In like 3 seconds.
The puck hit him first, it dropped, he couldn't find it, they shot it, he kicked it, they shot it again, he kicked it, he sprawled out, then they hit him in the chest with it, and it was like, oh, is it Carey Price or Patrick Waugh? I'm sorry, I don't remember. Is it 2020 or 1990? I'm not even like.
He's the ultimate equalizer.
He is. This is Hart Trophy. This is Hart Trophy winner Carey Price. This is like 2015 Carey Price. If I were any of these other teams in the Eastern Conference, I would be. This would keep me up at night right now. Seeing how well Carey Price is playing and how good Montreal looks in front of him. Because they're winning by committee right now. They're all pulling their weight. That's really what it is. Like, they know they can't, they don't have a star player like Sidney Crosby. So the whole team takes it upon themselves to play to win.
Like I said, one even strength goal in that game against the Canadiens is not going to cut it.
No. And do you think there's something to be said for the mentality that the Canadiens are playing with? Do you think that like the coach maybe, or even like the players themselves have fostered some sort of chip on their shoulder? This mentality of like, nobody's giving us a chance against this team, let's go out there and prove them wrong. I mean, like, do you think they like just stood around the room and like, guys, nobody believes in us, but like, we have Carey Price, like that's it, like all we need is Carey Price.
I think there's definitely something to be said for that with the right type of coach. I mean, we saw it last year, let's be honest here. John Tortorella is the ultimate chip on the shoulder coach.
He was with the Rangers too. I mean, that's his thing.
I don't really know necessarily that that's coming from a coaching staff of Claude Julien, but I honestly do believe that maybe not. I think the mentality isn't the chip on the shoulder. I think the mentality is when they saw Carey Price playing Game 1, they started to believe in themselves, and I think that Game 1 was huge. If Carey Price comes out and is just okay, lets in like 3 or 4 goals, couple of softies, this series is over. But when you're playing in front of a goalie that's as hot as Carey Price is, that is so clutch for your confidence. That is crucial. You take a couple chances, and they have to take chances to generate offense with this team.
And there's honestly some veteran leadership on the team. I mean, Shea Weber is the captain, and Shea Weber's played a lot of playoff games in his life, and Shea Weber knows what it takes to win. He's never won a Stanley Cup, but he knows what it takes to win. So, and I think that's a big component of also having a team of a lot of younger guys like, Ryan Suzuki or even Max Domi and Jonathan Drouin, who don't have a lot of playoff experience. Having a guy like Shea Weber around, which again might not be, fostering that chip on the shoulder, but might be more or less just telling them, like, guys, listen, it's fine. Just settle into the game. Don't worry about it. Like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like, we have Carey. Don't worry about making mistakes. Carey can bail us out. And, like, and if he doesn't and we get scored on, it's fine. We can go back out there and we'll get it, Like, it's something to be said for having a nice calming force on the team like Shea Weber, or even Jeff Petrie. Philip Deneau's played a fair share of playoff games with the Canadiens in the early 2010s. So I don't know. I think I just think the mentality, and like you said, now they actually believe in themselves, and that's scary. When a team starts to believe in themselves and they have a goalie like Carey Price, ooh.
So, to answer your question that started this whole discussion about goaltenders, am I going to Tristan Jarry in Game 3? It's tough because I don't think Murray's necessarily played bad.
He hasn't played great.
No. And that's kind of been the book on him. I mean, even when they won those back-to-back Stanley Cups, it really wasn't because of Matt Murray.
No.
He was a good enough goalie to get it done. I think he's basically like a slightly better Corey Crawford. We're on the right team, he'll get you a couple cups.
Yeah.
But when the chips are down, are you really looking to him to be the driver? No, the driver of this team is the offense. And, maybe you could argue throw in Tristan Jarry because... and
Jarry's played much better this year. I mean, he looked good in the exhibition game, too.
The NHL totally botched this whole draft thing, in my opinion, because I hate the fact that teams are getting eliminated and being like, well, we can still get Lafreniere. I hate that. But to a certain extent, it's like, yeah, throw in Jarry, because if you lose, you might get Lafreniere. And that's not a knock on Tristan Jarry. It's just the reality of the situation. But
I mean, back against the wall, what do you have to lose? Matt Murray hasn't looked great, and Tristan Jarry's looked good all year. So maybe it's the shakeup you need. Maybe it's a wake-up call. It's like, wow, they're really gonna, Mike Sullivan's really willing to bench what is essentially a two-time Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I think it's kind of a coin flip. If I was in Mike Sullivan's shoes, I think I would be starting Tristan Jarry just because.
What do you have to lose?
Matt Murray's been playing okay, but he hasn't been winning you games. He hasn't been losing you games, but he has been winning you games. And when you're playing a goalie that is winning his team games, like Carey Price, throw a little shake-up in the room, give a little fire under everyone, Because really, you use that as ammunition. And a lot of times coaches aren't benching a goalie because he's playing bad. They're just benching a goalie or pulling a goalie to be like, listen, this is what you guys did, and you need to get your act together.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be the next guy on the bench. It starts with the goalie, but next thing is you're going to be glued to the bench.
I mean, look at it. Mike Keenan benched Mark Messier and Brian Leetch in the same game in '94. That's a message. Those guys, Brian Leetch hadn't won a Stanley Cup yet. He's the best, but he was one of the best defensemen in the league. And Mark Messier was a 5-time Stanley Cup champion riding the pine. So, like you said, it's like, if you guys aren't going to play, then you're not going to play. And in terms of a goaltender, it's like, if you guys aren't going to play, then I'm not going to play him. There's no point in me leaving him out here. He
doesn't deserve this.
Yeah, I'm not going to leave him out here so you guys can let him get shelled for, 60 minutes. You guys want to play like that? Fine, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you, but, I'm not letting you do this to him.
Yeah.
And that might be the kind of message that Mike Sullivan has to send, because, let's be honest, Mike Sullivan's a fiery guy. He always has been. Even when he was an assistant with the Rangers, always has been a fiery guy, so... If anyone's going to find a way to light a fire under his team, I would put my money on either John Tortorella or Mike Sullivan, who's diet John Tortorella at this point.
So let's put a little bow on the series and say, how are you feeling about the Pittsburgh Penguins? Do you think they're going to come back? Do you think they're done?
I think they might be done. Honestly, I really think Montreal might pull this off, just because right now they might. It's like a wounded animal. Montreal smells the blood in the water. I think the whole hockey world smells the blood in the water. Because we all thought Pittsburgh was going to come out and blow them off the rink. We were like, oh, these guys aren't even going to deserve to be on the same ice surface as the Pittsburgh Penguins. And honestly, it looks like the other way around. It looks like the Pittsburgh Penguins don't even deserve to be on the same ice surface as the Montreal Canadiens right now. Or, let me rephrase that. They don't deserve to be on the same ice as Carey Price.
Yeah.
Carey Price is absolutely... Oh, man, they had Robert Haig.
Carey Price is the ultimate, like I said, the ultimate equalizer.
It hit Robert Haig in his skate and then hit Boyd in his stick. Oof. Yikes. But
the reason that I kind of agree with you on that is just because if you gave Carey Price 2 games to win one of them, he'll probably get it done.
Look at it this way. Carey Price stole 2 games. He did his job. Now the rest of the team has to win a single game. It's a best of 2.
Even that, or if you're hey, Carey, you have 2 games, win one of them, he'll probably just be like, okay.
Honestly, Carey Price is the type of goalie that could probably win you both games, and he'll win you 4 games in a 5-game series.
And this is coming from a guy. I did say Pittsburgh in 5 because I was like, Carey Price is good enough to steal 2 games, but I thought it was going to be Pittsburgh goes up 1-0, Carey Price steals a game. Pittsburgh goes up 2-1, Carey Price steals a game, and in Game 5 they win. I didn't think it would be Montreal's up 2-1, holding Pittsburgh to 1 even strength goal.
I mean, essentially, like I said, like I really just think, I think everybody smells the blood in the water, and even if Pittsburgh gets by Montreal at this point, if I wouldn't feel good about if I was Pittsburgh matching up, because if they run into a team like Boston, they're going to run into a team like Boston or Tampa or even Washington or Philly. Like these teams are all going to see that Montreal gave you a hard time, and yeah, maybe none of these teams have Carey Price, but they all still have goaltenders that are like just under Carey Price's level, and normally like elite goal. I mean, normally elite goaltenders. You know, you have Braden Holtby, you have Carter Hart, who's one of the best young goalies in the league. Then you have Andrei Vasilevsky, arguably the best goaltender in the NHL, and
or
Tuukka Rask.
Tuukka Rask, yeah.
Vezina Trophy like you have realistically 4 Vezina Trophy caliber goaltenders.
You're not getting an easy matchup in that.
Yeah. So if you're having a hard time scoring against a team like Montreal, who overall isn't very good, but their goaltender is playing out of his mind, I wouldn't feel very good if I was Pittsburgh matching up against any of these teams who are actually good hockey teams with great goaltenders.
No. And I think that's a very fair way to put it.
Like I said, if one of these teams, they're not gonna fool around with Pittsburgh. Like if Pittsburgh comes in wounded like they are right now, they're gonna go for the kill. They're gonna go right for their neck.
Yeah, it's not looking so good in Pittsburgh. But let's keep it on the 12 seeds. We'll shift over to the West. The Chicago Blackhawks are up 2-1 on the Edmonton Oilers. I honestly, the way I see this series is it's kind of playing out very much contrarily to the Montreal Canadiens series, where it's playing out the opposite of what I thought was happening. This series is more or less what I thought would happen, where it's 2 high-powered offenses, 2 kind of just okay defenses, and 2 kind of just goaltenders.
Yeah.
I just think that, you know, the Oilers really should be winning this series because their offense, it's hard because, yeah, you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but then again, on the other side, you have Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, being supported by a very solid young cast of forwards. Kirby Dach, Alex DeBrincat, even Dylan Strome is starting to get his game together.
Not William Nylander, Alex Nylander.
And
Dominic Kubalik.
Again, like, yeah, the Blackhawks defense isn't fantastic. You still have Duncan Keith, who's a serviceable guy. You have a couple of guys who are, like, pretty good top 4 guys.
I mean, like, Connor Murphy's good. I like Connor Murphy a lot. And Calvin DeHaan, when healthy, is useful.
Yeah, you have a couple of guys who are like, yeah, they're top 4. Edmonton's kind of the same way. You have Ethan Bear and
Oscar Klefbom,
Darnell Nurse, who are like, okay, these guys, you know, they can get it done, but they're not really going to be blowing anybody out of the water. And then you get Corey Crawford and Mike Smith / Mikko Koskinen, and it's like, okay,
well,
that's not really thrilling.
if you told me Chicago, like, obviously Chicago couldn't have predicted this, right? Like, when they made the trade with they traded with Robin Leonard, they had no aspirations to make the playoffs at that point. That was essentially them throwing in the towel.
The team.
Yeah. And to be fair to them, they should have. I mean, they were in like at that point they were like 12th or 13th place. I mean,
nobody could have seen this coming.
No, absolutely not. So it's just unfortunate that they had a guy like Robin Leonard who would honestly have put probably Chicago over the top in this. Like in our predictions, we probably all would have bet on Chicago because the goaltending matchup would have been so much better.
Absolutely.
But like here we are playing what is essentially a series straight out of 1985 in 2020, where you have 2 teams whose goaltenders aren't particularly great scoring.
Every shot that goes towards the net, I'm waiting for it to go in.
I mean, Connor McDavid has 5 goals in 3 games. Like, it's ridiculous.
So and
Jonathan Toews looks absolutely lights out.
Let's talk about Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. Before we get to McDavid himself, Game 1, starting Mike Smith, would you have started Mikko Koskinen, or
does it really matter? Like, I mean, it's like, do I want a flaming bag of dog poop, or do I want one that's kind of just sitting in the rain? Like, they're both terrible, but they're all terrible in their own ways, right? Mike Smith is like the flaming hot one because, like, the things he does are very visibly, like, bad. You're like, oh god,
serving
we have to do something
behind the net.
Yeah, whereas like Mikko Koskinen kind of just sits there and slowly stenches up the room because it's like it's been out in the rain. So you're like, oh god, this is just the worst.
So 97, I know our friend Tim has been really hard on his defensive abilities in this series. What are you seeing out of Connor McDavid?
I mean, to be fair to like Tim, you know, critiquing McDavid the way he is, it's just, and it's a fair assessment. Like, when you pay a guy, not even pay a guy, when you expect a guy who's essentially labeled the best in the world. He has to live up to that label. And in the game 1 and game 2, I mean game 1 specifically, he's both the reason they lost that game and also the reason they were in the game at all to begin with, because he scored the power play goal and ended up with 4 points in a 6-4 hockey game where if 2 goals are directly the result of him not playing defense and playing lazy hockey, if he, by that coin, if he doesn't make those 2 lazy plays, that's a 4-4 hockey game, and Connor McDavid looks like, Jesus, because he got them in the game single-handedly. But,
right.
I mean, I think it's fair to critique him for, not playing up to a standard, because, again, when you're expected to be the best player on earth, you should go out there and perform like the best player on earth.
On both ends of the rink.
Right, exactly. And listen, nobody's going to mistake Connor McDavid for being a Selke Trophy nominee, but he's also not terrible on his own end. But he looked lazy. That was really the issue. Was he wasn't, for a guy who's known for his skating, he wasn't moving, and that's really it. If Connor McDavid stopped skating,
right,
what are the tools does he have?
If he gets if he's on the back check, he's skating backwards and he gets dangled by Patrick Kane, it's okay, that's fine. But when he's kind of just gliding around his net, not really covering anybody,
turning it over, making an unforced turnover in the corner,
that's when you can really start to get on and be all right,
Connor.
I get you're scoring goals, but the other issue is I think there's just a bit more of a magnifying glass on him in this series in particular, because he's going up against one of the best two-way forwards to ever lace up a pair of skates in Jonathan Toews, who's playing just as many minutes as him.
I mean, he's matched up against him all night long.
Who's putting up not as many points, but he's putting up as many big goals as him, and he's certainly better in his own end than Connor McDavid is.
I mean, dude, Johnny Toews in game 1 scored those 2 big goals and essentially sent the game out of reach. At that point, Chicago looked like they were going to run away with it. I mean,
and even the game last night, Edmonton was up 3-1 pretty late into the third period. And I mean, granted, look, Edmonton does not have the defense to play a 3-1 hockey game. It's just
nurse a lead like that, yeah.
But it's the playoffs. You have to find a way. If you have a 3-1 lead under 10 minutes to go, you should be winning that game.
You have to win
every
that
time.
Hockey game.
There's no excuse for losing a game when you're up 2 with less than 10 to go.
No, absolutely not.
And not only did you lose the game, you lost in regulation.
You blew the game.
You didn't even get to overtime.
You somehow managed to turn a 2-goal lead into a 1-goal deficit with a minute 30 left in the game.
It just can't happen. It cannot happen.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Dave Tippett's probably going to have an aneurysm by the end of this series. I mean, if you're the coach, if you're the Chicago Blackhawks coach, Jeremy
Colton,
you're kind of looking at it being yeah, you know what? This is kind of what I expected.
We're not going to win the Stanley Cup, but we're going to make it interesting.
We're scoring a lot of goals and we're making it exciting, but they're not. I mean, let's be real. Chicago is not playing good defense either. I mean, neither of these. The way this series is working, whoever scores last wins.
Shot for shot.
And that sounds like the right thing. Or whoever scores last wins, but that's not usually how games work. Because you can ride a 3-1 lead into the game, but you could score those goals. You know what I'm saying? Because then you make it 3-2.
The other team gets a late goal, make it 3-2, but you still win.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other team gets a late goal, and then you just
lose
totally
the
collapse in
hockey
on
game.
yourself.
I mean,
so what does Edmonton have to do to win this series?
Find a better goaltender. I mean,
again, this is kind of like the Maple Leafs question. Are you saying to the guys, let's get our act together in our own zone? Or are you saying, listen, we're not going to be able to defend these leads. We have to put up 5 or 6 goals.
I think you just have to score. You just have to score your way out of a jam, especially when you know Corey Crawford's on the other side of the ice. It's guys, what are we doing? Just start throwing things at the... I mean, they also just lost Tyler Ennis for the series, but... I mean, I don't think... This sounds like an excuse for everything, but I don't... Kirby Dach didn't try to hurt him.
Ennis turned at a very inopportune time, I think.
It's like the Scheifele thing. Again, if these guys... I know Ennis is a significantly smaller player than Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach is 6'3", 210. He's a big kid, but just stand up and take the hit.
Just got to take the hit, yeah.
He would have hit him on his shoulders, and I mean, there's nothing to say he still wouldn't have gotten hurt. But again, Doc wasn't coming in to blow him up. He was coming in to rub him out.
Everyone was oh, he led with the knees, but the thing is,
he
Doc glided into the hit. He stopped striding.
His arm stayed down.
And everyone gets wide when they make a hit because it gives you better leverage. So he really didn't lead with his knees, I don't think. It was just, and he would have hit him shoulder to shoulder, but because Ennis turned at that very last second, he got hit in the numbers.
Yeah. He put himself in a bad spot. I mean,
And that's not, everyone's like, oh, it's not a penalty. I mean,
well, yeah,
Doc was gonna hit him clean, shoulder to shoulder. It's not like he turned and Doc had one Mississippi, two Mississippi.
he
Turned and he had like 5/100ths of a second.
He literally turned in Kirby Doc's face, and Doc was like, what is he?
He was already mid-hit.
There's no way to bail out of that hit. Like, there's no way for him to get out of the way and not hit him.
And if you bail out of that hit, to be
You're
honest,
probably gonna
you're
hurt yourself.
both probably gonna get hurt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like you said, like they're talking about like the leading with his leg. I mean, like,
Everybody gets wide to make hits.
but even that, like he didn't. It wasn't like he stuck his leg out. Like he didn't extend his knee towards him. His leg was just there, and they're like, oh, he hit him in the back of the leg with his knee. It's like, yes, because he's 7 inches taller than him. So of course his knee is gonna hit him somewhere awkward because he's not the same size. If Tyler Ennis was also 6'3", as big as Kirby Doc, Doc's knee probably would have hit him in like his thigh. Like it wouldn't have been bad.
He didn't stride. He didn't leave his feet. He didn't chicken wing him. It was
He
just
kept his hands
just
down.
unfortunate.
His stick and hand stayed down. It was just Ennis made a bad choice. He should have just tried to take the hit.
And to be fair, I mean, the Oilers, like, losing Tyler Ennis, does it suck? Yes, but they have enough offensive weapons to get it done.
I mean,
they need to play more in the offensive zone.
you know who I
It's just
forgot
bottom
was on
line.
this Oilers team that like I was reminded of? Andreas Athanasiou was on this team.
He's been pretty much a non-factor.
Has
You know
he
who else
played-
has been a total non-factor that I've been harping on all year?
Who?
James Neal. Done pretty much nothing this whole series.
He's got a couple of goals, but again, they've been like cleaning up Connor McDavid's garbage, and I could score a couple of goals cleaning up McDavid's garbage. Like, and I can't even skate. So
Again, put a little bow on it. Is Edmonton done?
it's hard to bet against Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews when they're in the driver's seat, right? I could see Edmonton coming back and winning the series because Edmonton's actually a better hockey team than Chicago is, at least on paper, kind of.
Just
Like-
marginally.
Like it's really marginal.
It's like the offense is at level 10 and 9, and then the other two facets of the game are at like 2.
essentially. I mean, it's like we said. Like when you asked me what team can make a deep run, like a dark horse run, and I said the Blackhawks, and it's specifically for this reason. I thought this matchup was really favorable for the Blackhawks because like they're playing a team that also can't defend. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Oh, you're gonna let Showtime skate around like he's got all the time in the world, and then he's gonna just rip it by your goaltender because you have who? Oh, Mikko Koskinen. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not Carey Price or any of the other goaltenders who are in the playoffs. It's Mikko Koskinen. So I don't know. I feel good about the Blackhawks. I don't feel good about the Oilers, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Blackhawks found a way to throw the series away.
The reason that I'll say the Oilers aren't out of it yet is just because the nature of the series is such a high-flying series that if McDavid comes out and puts up another hat trick in the first period, the Blackhawks, yes, do they have the firepower, but
It's also like
if they go shot for shot, in theory, the Oilers should win this series.
I mean, also like there's something to be said for the fact that the Blackhawks are the youngest team in the league. They're the youngest team in the playoff tournament. The Rangers were the second youngest, and whereas the Rangers kind of folded under that pressure, like not like folded, but they had a harder time adjusting to it. Whereas like the Blackhawks, they're just having fun. They're
like-
riding it. Like they're just honestly they're riding a vibe, and that's it. Like.
They're like, we shouldn't even be here, so like we're just gonna have fun.
And if they manage to knock out the Edmonton Oilers, that's just icing on the cake, you know?
Yeah, so I don't think Edmonton's done, but I mean, whoever wins this series is gonna get slammed in the first round anyway. So it's almost
They're gonna run into like the only team I think they might be able to get by either of these teams is the Las Vegas Golden Knights, but like that's just because I don't feel confident about that team in general.
like either one of these teams. If you're playing either the Blues, the Stars, or the Avs, like you're not making it out.
Oh
of that.
no, you're gonna absolutely body slam by any of those teams.
So we'll move on to we'll do Calgary Winnipeg since that is game 4 is tonight. Potentially the final game. The Calgary Flames could knock out the Winnipeg Jets.
So you want to just get the elephant out of the room, Mark Scheifele? And we'll talk about the Scheifele hit.
I don't think it was a dirty hit.
Oh, I don't either.
A lot of people are saying that Tkachuk intention. First of all, the problem is part of the issue is we don't know his injury. Is it a leg injury? Was it a tendon injury? We don't know, and we won't know because the NHL's
I
protocol.
mean, he's walking. He's at the games. He's up on his own power, walking around. So
Yeah. If we knew the extent of the injury, because if this is a knee injury, then nobody's even questioning if the Tkachuk hit was dirty because it's like, oh, we just called it a rut. But the fact that it might be a tendon problem, everyone's like, oh, he cut him with his skate. people are severely underestimating how difficult it actually would have been for him to intentionally cut his skate on a hit like that.
I mean, it's not the Matt Cook situation where Matt Cook had Eric Carlson pinned to the wall and not moving, and then
stamped his
on,
leg.
yeah, and then stomped on him. Like,
this was mid-hit.
it happened like that.
Yeah. I don't think it was dirty.
No, I don't think so either.
I like Matthew Tkachuk. So this is not me being a Tkachuk, and I like Brady Tkachuk. So this is not me being a Tkachuk apologist, because are there times when Matthew Tkachuk crosses the line?
Of course.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
But he's not the kind of player that's out there to hurt people. And second of all, again, the level of difficulty for you to intentionally have done that and then make it look innocent, because you can intentionally do it, but it'll be very obvious. The level of difficulty to A, do that at that speed, and then B, make it look innocent is astronomical. And I think people are severely underestimating that.
I think some of the onus has to be on Scheifele.
Because he tried to bail out of the hit.
He put himself in he put himself in an awkward situation. And in this case, unlike Ennis, who's smaller than Doc, I can understand why he wanted to bail out of the hit, because he was like, not that he was afraid, but like, you got a bigger guy bearing down on you. You're not really like looking forward to taking the hit, you know? Whereas Mark Scheifele's bigger than Matthew Tkachuk. Like, just both taller and like physically just bigger than him. So like, again, and Tkachuk wasn't coming in. He was coming in with some speed, but he wasn't coming in to try and kill him. He was coming in to, again, rub him out. He was trying to just finish his check and get back in the play. And Scheifele turned, toe-picked the ice, and that was it. He went down, and then he got hit awkwardly. Like, so I think some of the onus has to be on these guys who are getting hurt like this, because both Tyler Ennis and Mark Scheifele put themselves in awkward situations and got hit, and they paid for it. Like, I know you're taught to like finish your check and avoid, like, as a player you're taught two things: finish your checks, and you can, and try to avoid checks when you can. Sometimes though, there's something to be said for just standing up and taking a hit. Like,
you're way more likely to hurt yourself and the other player if you're trying to avoid the hit.
Right, because you're gonna do something. It's like what we were talking about the other day, honestly, when you and I were watching the game. We're talking about when guys get kneed on accident. When you bail out and you jump, the guy's leg is already there. So like, of course he's gonna try and finish the check. He's gonna try to turn his knee and stick it out to try to turn towards you to hit you. Like, he's taught to finish his check, and you're taught to avoid the check. And at the end of the day, what that just turns out to is you put yourself in a bad spot, and he just clipped you. And that's what happened here, I think. I really think Scheifele just put himself in a bad spot, and there was no way Matthew Tkachuk was going to be able to avoid him.
Yeah, so the series took on a very interesting tone after that, because Game 1, the Jets didn't really look good.
Hellebuck looked all right.
They looked out of sync. Hellebuck looked good, but he definitely needed some help. They kind of just looked like they weren't all on the same page. Game 2, they come out, no Scheifele, no Line, and they, for all intents and purposes, they controlled that game. I thought the Jets looked very calm. They looked very controlled. They controlled a lot of the play in that game. They came away with a win without their two best players.
And then they come out in Game 3 and get absolutely killed,
and they
6-2.
Look awful. Completely awful.
So, here's a question for you. This is kind of off topic, but when are we going to start talking about Patrick Laine and the possibility of him maybe being a bust? And not a bust in the fact that he's not going to be an NHL player, but a bust in that he might not be baby Ovechkin the way people are pointing him out to be. The last couple of years have been real streaky for him. He hit 40 in his rookie year, but he hasn't gotten really close since. And, I mean, he's injured a lot. He gets hurt a lot. I don't even know what happened to him this time. He got whacked on the hand, and I think that was it. Like, he just was done. He had it.
I think Laine right now, honestly, I mean, we had this discussion the other day. I genuinely think he might have the best shot in the NHL.
Oh, yeah. I just feel like he doesn't utilize it effectively enough. Like, he's so streaky, and I don't understand why he doesn't just shoot everything. Ovechkin, like, for all intents and purposes, like, Ovechkin has probably a shot of similar quality to his wrister, like the amount of, like, how hard and how fast he shoots it. So I really don't understand why he doesn't just shoot everything like Ovechkin does. Ovechkin ends games with like 15, 16 shots on goal sometimes.
And to be fair to Laine, prior to this season, he didn't really play with a good center a lot.
Right.
He didn't play with Scheifele all that often prior to this year.
Little. Well, he played with a little bit with Paul Stastny, and he was a good fit with Paul Stastny.
Yeah, so for a long stretch of his career, which is still very young, he's only like 22.
Yeah, it's only his third year in the league, I think.
He hasn't had a great center, which for a scoring winger, you need a great center. Every Ovechkin needs their Backstrom.
Yeah.
The thing that I don't like about Patrick Laine is when he's, and I think this was something that plagued Ovechkin in his early years, so I still have faith that Laine will round out his game, but when he's not scoring, he's not noticeable. And Ovechkin had that problem for a long time. When Ovechkin wasn't on a score sheet, you didn't really notice anything he was doing. It wasn't really until he hit 28, 29, 30 that he rounded out the physical part of his game. So he when he wasn't scoring, he was still throwing checks. He was still getting into puck battles in the corner. When Laine isn't on, he's really not on. It's not even like the off switch. It's like he's not even plugged in.
Do you think there's some credibility to people talking about like the mental aspect of his game, maybe not necessarily being where it needs to be, maybe his, in terms of not like dedication, but his preparedness or his willingness to really like, because I'm gonna leave. Let's just get the elephant out of the room. I mean, he's not allowed to bring his PlayStation on the road anymore because he was literally playing too much Fortnite all the time. He would rather sit in the hotel room and play Fortnite than be on the ice. So like, do you think there's something to be said for like him overall, just his attitude towards the game might be sort of kind of maybe not as professional as it needs to be? I mean, I'm okay, look, I don't want to sit here and question anybody's professionalism, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything about these guys other than the fact that like what I watch. But when a news story comes out and tells you that you're literally not allowed to bring your Xbox on the road because you were skipping optional skates to sit home and play Fortnite, and at home you were just sitting and playing Fortnite all the time and not working out or anything, that's kind of a red flag to me. I don't know.
I think
again, he's also 22, so let's preface that he's a kid. Yeah. He is a kid.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the thing that Laine needs to find is another element to his game. And Ovechkin found that, but again, Ovechkin didn't really find that until later in his career when he was. And well,
he also had a succession of defensively minded coaches that forced him to learn to bring a different element to his game.
Right.
Because the other coaches were just relying on him to score goals, whereas like, you know, when he played for, I don't even remember those coaches, there were so many of them, but at one point they looked at him like, Alex, if you're not scoring, you're not contributing, we need you to contribute something else.
I think it was really honestly rounded that out when Barry Trotz came to town.
Oh, I think so too.
And even if Laine doesn't want to become a physical guy, so say Laine, maybe he's a little bit more injury prone, he doesn't really want to be physical. So I can understand that.
I mean, like, maybe he just needs to up his like, I don't know.
I think if you don't want to be physical, that's fine, but maybe you find another element. Maybe you get really good at the forecheck and reading the play, and you become a hound dog. Maybe you round out your 50-50 puck battle game so you can win those puck battles in the corner. You have to
work on your passing game. You become a playmaker.
You have to find something in your game when you're not scoring. That's always the question with goal scorers. When you're not scoring, what are you doing? With Ovechkin, the answer was, well, I'm going to get really good at being big and physical. And well, it was like, okay, good. You found that.
That's kind of the question about Pasternak I have right now. Like, if he's not scoring, what is he doing?
Right, and granted, every goal scorer kind of goes through this, and it really just becomes a matter of when you're not scoring, what are you doing? Stamkos kind of went through it, but when his answer was when you're not scoring, what are you doing? Stamkos said, well, I'm going to get really good at quarterback in the power play. And then for a long stretch of time, when Hedman was more of a defensive defenseman, Stamkos was on the point, quarterback in the power play.
Stamkos also invested some time in rounding out his defensive game. I mean, again, he's never going to win a Selke trophy, but like he's no slouch in his own end. He gets in there and he fights for that puck. He wants it.
Yeah, and I think that's...
And Kucherov's the same way. I think, like, Kucherov did the other thing you talked about. Kucherov was like, all right, well, you're not scoring, what are you doing? Nikita Kucherov's a hound dog on that puck. He's fast, and he wants it. So he's always all over you. Whereas, like, Laine right now, again, only a 22, has a lot of time to figure it out. I still think he's going to be a great player, but, like, he's not scoring, he's not doing anything, and then he gets hurt. And he's out of the lineup.
and I guess to kind of, like, bring it all back to the Calgary series, I think the issue with Winnipeg right now is that consistency. When Laine, like you said, is very streaky, when he's on, he's on, when he's off, he's off. I think that we're seeing, and granted, again, it's only 3 games, but you only have 5 games to figure this out. You have to find that consistency. And the Jets, game 1, they looked awful. Game 2, they controlled the play. They had a lot of puck possession. They were physical. They were on their toes. And then game 3, they come out and they lay a total egg. And that consistency in the playoffs is going to get you killed, and you don't have a 7-game series. If you lose tonight, you're going home.
Even in a 7-game series, you don't have a lot of time to find. No. You realistically only have 2 games to find some consistency, because if you go into a 3-0 hole,
good luck.
Yeah, exactly. There's only been 4 teams to come back from it. So,
David Riddick sitting on the bench, starting Cam Talbot. Do you have any?
Talbot's won you 2 games at this point, right? And look, Talbot hasn't played bad.
No.
He hasn't won them the games by any stretch, but he also didn't lose them the game they lost. They didn't play well. He's making saves he needs to make. That's really what it comes down to.
We just talked a lot about the Winnipeg Jets. Do you think it's more that the Jets are beating themselves at this point than the Calgary Flames winning games? Because I kind of see it as like the consistency right now is really what's killing the Jets, and that's not to take anything away from the Flames, but
the Flames are playing good hockey, but like from shift to shift, you really don't know what you're getting from the Winnipeg Jets.
And the Flames aren't doing anything particularly well. They're not like, they found a new way to penetrate the interior, or they're getting really good defensive stops. It's just like the Flames are playing Flames hockey, and I don't know what the Jets are doing.
Sean Monahan scoring goals from the slot because they're letting Johnny Hockey just stand there and feed him all night, And again, I think there's going to be said for Winnipeg's defense being kind of inexperienced and young. I mean, Neil Pionk has played no playoff games before this. Josh Morrissey's only played a couple of, those last couple of playoff years with the Jets, but he didn't play it as the number one defenseman. Josh Morrissey's now the number one defenseman in Winnipeg. I mean, I think he's looked pretty good. I like Josh Morrissey a lot. I think he's played well for them. Sammy Niku's played literally 0 playoff games up until this point. It's tough.
Are the Jets done? Do you think that they're going home tonight?
Yeah, I think it's over. I don't know. I just don't think. I think without Scheifele more than Laine than anything, that's too much. That's a too big an injury to overcome. And even if he comes back and in the first, or even if they get through this round and maybe he comes back at the end of the first round of the actual playoffs, I don't know. I just don't really see it. I mean, Hellebuck's been great. Hellebuck's looked good for them, but he's not stealing them games like I thought he would. But
he's not playing like Carey Price is,
like you said. And that's like you said. He needs some help. He's playing great, but he needs some help. He can't.
Yeah, for sure.
For what it's for the difference is Montreal's bought into playing some real heavy defense in front of Carey Price, and that just happens to work in favor of Carey Price being an absolute animal and making saves he shouldn't.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel particularly great about either one of these teams. Even if Calgary gets past the Winnipeg Jets, they're not doing anything that's making me particularly happy with them.
I think they're still going to get. I think if either of these teams get through this round, whatever team comes out of this, they're going to get slammed by a team in the first round. I mean.
There's very few matchups that I see as favorable for the Jets, especially without their number one center, because that center core is not great.
I mean,
they have Cody Eakin, who's a solid third-line center. Andrew Kopp's playing well, but you need a top 2 center. You actually need 2 top 2 centers.
You need both of them now. Before you only needed a second-line center. Now, with Scheif down, you need all of them.
Yeah, so to kind of put a little bow on it, we're both not feeling too great about the
either team, really.
The Jets or the Flames. We'll go out to not going out to the desert because they're all playing in Edmonton, but we'll go to Arizona, Nashville before we wrap it up with the latest game today, Vancouver, Minnesota. This is a real weird series for me.
It's the most blast series I think I'm watching. I don't know.
I have to say, it really, to me, through 3 games, it feels like the biggest factor in this series is Darcy Kemper, because game 1 he was fantastic and they won. Game 2 he was just okay and they got smoked. And in game 3 he stopped, I think at one point the shots were 14-1 in favor of Nashville, and the Coyotes were up 1-0.
Yeah.
And it's really they're going the way that Darcy Kemper's going, and when he's on, he's on. When he's not, the Coyotes aren't doing anything particularly well. And again, this offense that is filled with names that should be producing continues to just kind of be I
don't understand. I mean, and we kind of have to talk about John Chaika, right? Just walking out on them right before the opening round. I
don't know what that man was thinking.
I mean, he had an analytic, he was the analytic god, right? He was this guy who's gonna, hockey driven entirely by. He was like Kyle Dubas West, right? He was the Western version of Kyle Dubas. Whereas Kyle Dubas is there's some merit to what he's doing because the team is producing the results and the players he's went out and got to do those things that he's talking about are doing those things. It's just that the Maple Leafs are struggling still for some reason. He went out and got Arizona and he traded for Phil Kessel, and Phil Kessel has done absolutely nothing for this team in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
He's done nothing for them in the playoffs. He goes out and gets Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall's been okay for them, but you're not paying Taylor Hall to be okay. You're paying Taylor Hall to score 40 goals, and he's not even going to get close. He's not even a factor in these games right now. And Taylor Hall is your best player. They're
Yeah.
paying Clayton Keller $9 million, and Clayton Keller's not doing anything.
I think Clayton Keller's looked better than he has in the regular season in his playoff round so
But
far.
still, like $9 million.
He's not $9 million. It's just weird because, again, when you look at the names on this Coyotes offense, Derek Stepan, Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, Clayton Keller,
Connor Garland.
you like, those are names that you would be like, sure, maybe they're not gonna like explode the league on fire, but you would think, okay, Hall and Kessel, and Grant, again, they got Taylor Hall to trade deadline, but you'd think,
Well, they got him
okay,
like December, but yeah.
you think like, okay, Kessel's gonna put up 30. He'll put his 30 goals in. Taylor Hall probably in his short time with you is probably gonna net you like another 20 goals. Derek Stepan, he probably hit like 60 points, but like their leading point scorer is Nick Schmaltz, and it's like this offense they just don't click, and it's really weird because I really like Rick Tocchet as a coach, and I just don't think he's getting the most out of this team.
Well, I don't think Rick Tocchet, like, honestly, I don't know what he you have like 4 or 5 players on this roster that are all like the same player. You have like 4, like, you have Connor Garland, you have Nick Schmaltz, you have like Lawson Krause, and then you have like, I don't know, whoever else, I can't even remember, but like you essentially have all these guys who are just like the same player that are just like mix and match like here. And I think that's kind of the issue, was like they tried to go for like this like deep win by committee kind of thing like St. Louis has, but then they were like, oh no, fuck that, we're gonna go out and get like superstar talent. And now it's like, okay, but now you have Phil Kessel playing with Derek Stepan, who's not who has never been the fastest guy in the league, and Phil Kessel's always been one of the fastest guys in the league, and then you add Taylor Hall, who's also one of the fastest guys in the league. So it's like, what is the design? Is this by design? But their defense is good. Like, I like their defense. OEL's great. Jacob Chikrin's taken a big step forward this year for them. Nick Hjalmarsson looks like the Hjalmarsson of old. I mean, he can still skate. He's still playing well. I'm glad to see him get over all those injuries he had, because remember, we thought he was going to be an LTIR dump for them, and now he's playing. So like that's a gift. Then
he's playing and he's looked good.
Yeah. Goligoski's looked all right.
I know the plan for this team was the strength was supposed to come from the goaltending in the back end. I understand that was the plan, and to this degree, it is working. They are currently up 2-1 on the Nashville Predators. The problem is when you have a team that's win by committee, like the New York Islanders or like the St. Louis Blues, you still need production from your top guys. You still need St. Louis. St. Louis still needs Vladimir Tarasenko to go out and put up 30 goals. I mean, he was hurt this year, but you still need Ryan O'Reilly to go out and put up 70 points. The win by committee doesn't mean, your top players can put up 30 points and you'll be fine.
No, it's the idea that like your middle six can all put up like 40-ish points and be okay. You're
not going to, instead of having like your top line putting up 90 each, your second line putting up 70, and your third line putting up 40, it's like your top line puts up 70, your middle six both put up like 40 to 50. The Coyotes aren't getting basically any of that, and their offense, look, they should have lost game 3. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Darcy Kemper bailed them out, and he can do that. He's a great goalie. I like Darcy Kemper, but are you going to really rely on Darcy Kemper to bail you out 18 more times? And they're playing the Nashville Predators, who I haven't been thrilled with all year. I really didn't like their team this year. I don't like the Nashville Predators, and I really think that the Coyotes are going to win this series. I still have faith that they will. But watching them play isn't really making me feel very good about their chances beyond the opening round.
UC Saros over Pekka Rinne. What do you think of that?
It makes sense. Saros down the stretch was playing significantly better than Pekka Rinne. And Saros hasn't been the reason that they've lost these games.
I mean,
I was a little surprised only just because this is likely Pekka Rinne's last season in Nashville. You'd think you would get to ride it out into the sunset one last time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like the opposite of the Henrik Lundqvist situation.
But, I mean, to be fair, bottom line, I mean, with the Rangers, if Shesterkin was healthy, he was probably starting game 1 too. And Saros is healthy, so they went with him. And he has been the reason they've lost. The reason that the Nashville Predators have lost is because they can't get past a hot goaltender. And to be fair, the Predators don't have the offense to get past a hot goalie anyway. Like,
what do you mean? They have Matt Duchene.
Yeah, you basically have Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson, Victor Arvidsson.
I mean, Nashville's got him in the same situation that Arizona's in, and the fact that they have like 4 of the same player on the roster.
And
I
none
mean,
of them are
Ryan
doing
Johansson and Matt
particularly
Duchene are like exactly the same kind of player.
Kyle
Victor
Turris.
Arvidsson, Kyle Turris, Victor Arvidsson. They have Mikhail Granlund, who's like bootleg Kyle Turris at this point. Like, then you have Victor Arvidsson, Colton Sissons, Philip Forsberg, like a bunch of 20-goal scorers that, like, sure, win by committee is great, but, like, who's your game breaker? Like we said, St. Louis still has Tarasenko, who can walk over the blue line and just crank a shot at 100 miles an hour and blow it through any goaltender in the league. So if they ran into a hot goaltender, you have a guy like that it can still beat the goaltender if he has to. But, like, who does Nashville have?
And I think the issue with Nashville right now is that for a couple of years, their defense and goaltending really masked a lot of these offensive inefficiencies. Whereas now, when you don't have PK Subban anymore, you have Roman Josi, who's a fantastic defenseman. You still have Ryan Ellis, who's a good defenseman.
But then Holm's still there.
But you say Saros, as much upside as he has, is not 2016 Pekka Rinne.
Not yet, right? Yeah.
And he's not masking those offensive inefficiencies anymore. Whereas Pekka Rinne would win you a lot of 1-0 games. This Nashville roster right now with the goaltending they're getting, I like Yusei Saros. He's going to be really good.
I do
but
too.
He's not the kind of guy that you can rely on to win you a 7-game series with 4 1-goal games. Not yet.
No. I think given a couple of years he will be, but right now, I mean, he's never done it before.
And that offense is the most frustrating construction on the planet because you keep trading for the same guy over and over. They bought in Kyle Turris. He was supposed to be the man. He wasn't the man. So they're like, all right, we'll bring in Ryan Johansson. He wasn't the man. All right, we'll sign Matt Duchene, who has never been the man.
And then, like, you know who we need? Mikhail Granlund. He's the man. And they traded away Kevin Fiala.
And Fiala's lighting up the Vancouver Canucks right now. Granted, not today, but he's been really good for them.
Well, like, he was a point per game coming down the stretch after that trade. Like, they just never, and the guys they need to give chances to, they never give a chance. Like, I don't understand. Like, Kevin Fiala could have been the game breaker for them. The way he skates and shoots that puck. I mean, did you see the second goal he scored against Minnesota? The rocket that hit the back bar? He literally turned, loaded it up, and fired it before anybody on the ice saw it. I didn't even see it in the game. I was like, what did that hit? And then I was like, oh, what in the net? The only person on the ice that saw it was the referee, and that was because he was standing at the net. He saw it hit the thing. Like, everybody else just stopped. Do you know what Nashville could really use right now? A guy who could do that.
A goal scorer.
Who could turn around and load up and blow a puck past the guy at like 95 miles an hour like that. Like,
instead, you have 3 kind of just okay playmakers and Victor Arvidsson, who never is going to ever hit that 40-goal chase that he had that one year. And Victor Arvidsson's a good player, but he's good for like 20 to 25 goals.
Yeah.
He's a good power forward.
It's just like, again,
if I was a Nashville fan, I would just be frustrated because it's like the same guy over and over, underachieving playmakers, don't have a goal scorer, traded away one of the only guys that brought any flair to the offense with PK Subban, and now
trade away a young player who also had all the upside to turn into the goal scorer you need for a centerman who's just like the 3 other centermen you have.
Look where they are now. So, to kind of wrap it up, do you think that Nashville is done?
Honestly, I don't know. I guess if Darcy Kemper stays hot, yeah. But like at the end of the day, like these teams are literally like the same team on paper. Like,
so it's kind of like Edmonton, Chicago, where you're not feeling good about either team's prospects after this, which is weird because we were both really high on the Phoenix Coyote or the Arizona Coyotes at the beginning of the year.
Because like when they made all these moves, it made sense. It was like all these things were like, oh yeah, this is all gonna lead to a better team, and then like it just didn't. And also, I want to point out that I really don't think that like John Hines is the right coach for Nashville.
No, I don't like John Hines as a coach. I don't.
I really liked Peter Laviolette as a fit. He wanted to play a skating game, and then granted, maybe the roster didn't fit that anymore. But why not go out and get a guy like Gerard Gallant who plays a simple, straight-line hockey game, which would fit perfectly with your team of 4 power forwards who are all exactly the same.
John Hines hasn't been a coach long enough, and he hasn't had a good enough team for me to really know what he's trying to bring to the table.
I mean, I have no idea what he tried to do with the Devils, but that's not his fault. That team was just bad.
Right. You really start to get a sense of what a coach wants to do when he has the personnel to do it. Like, we know that Sheldon Keefe plays a possession, high-flying offense game. We know that Barry Trotz plays a defensive game. John Hines has never had a team for us to really know what he's doing, but whatever he's doing is not working.
It just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit with that roster.
Whatever he's doing is not the way that roster is built because, I mean, first of all, it's a difficult roster to coach, but, like...
I just don't think, like...
They could use a defensive coach, honestly. Lean into your defense.
I don't think Peter Laviolette was the problem.
No, he wasn't. He really wasn't.
Like, what did you want him to do? You were giving him ham scraps and expecting a Stanley Cup with it. Like, he did the best he could with the roster he had because John Hines realistically only did about as well as he did when he took over the team. They played about 500 hockey until the end of the season, and like...
And I don't feel any better about them now than I did with Peter Laviolette.
I honestly would have felt better about them with Peter Laviolette because Peter Laviolette's a Stanley Cup champion. He's been to the Stanley Cup final. Like, he knows how to win hockey. He's the second winningest coach in America. Second winningest American-born coach of all time behind John Tortorella. The guy knows how to win hockey games.
John Hines instead. And it's like...
To be fair, who's the GM up there? I don't even remember his name.
Nashville? I do not remember.
Is it Dave Poyle still?
I don't think so. We'll do a quick Google search.
I think it's David Poyle still. He's been there for like 25 years or something crazy, but...
To kind of put a bow on it...
We don't feel good about either of these teams.
No.
And for a lot of the same reasons, we don't feel good about a lot of the other teams we said that about. It's just like they're not showing us anything.
Their GM is still Dave Poyle.
It is still Dave.
Yeah, I think the Coyotes will win it, but I don't feel good about them. I don't feel as good as I did at the start of the season. Last series is a series that I'm actually really excited about, which is Vancouver, Minnesota. And yes, I did predict Vancouver in a sweep, and that is dead. Vancouver today takes a 3-0 win over the Minnesota Wild, puts them in the driver's seat up 2-1. From what I've seen of this series, I think one thing that I've really noticed as a standout is that Quinn Hughes is the real deal. I mean, he is driving this offense from the back end, and he has been absolutely fantastic. He's just as smooth a skater. His puck handling is just as good. His decision-making is fantastic. He's been great for them. Jacob Markstrom, I know you have a lot to say about Jacob Markstrom, so I'll let you kind of carry this, but I think he's been one of the reasons that they're winning these games. But I know that you want to talk a lot about Jacob Markstrom.
I mean, Markstrom comes as advertised finally. Like, I've never been a doubter of his. I've always been a fan because when he was in Florida, he was playing behind a team that wasn't very good, still making 35-plus saves a night, losing games, 4-1, 3-2. Like, what do you want the guy to do, right? He doesn't have a team. He goes up to Vancouver, still doesn't have a team. But now that he's got a team in front of him, like, yeah, Jacob Markstrom's the real deal. Like, and then they have Thatcher Demko to back him up. Like, they have two great goaltenders. And like you said, Quinn Hughes is the real deal, man. Like, he looks so confident out there. Like, he's logging like huge minutes too. He ate like, I think he had like 18 minutes of work through like 2 periods. It was like, what? He's 19. What is he? 19? No,
he's like 20,
he's
21.
21. Like, yeah, he's younger than us. But like, I mean, Elias Pettersson. We all knew he's the real deal, but Elias Pettersson's the real deal too. He looks really good. You know, it's funny. We were actually talking. Tim and I were talking earlier, and we were trying to talk about how Elias Pettersson's like just a phenomenal hockey player, like just all around the ice, just a great hockey player. His own zone, the offensive zone. And Tim goes, you know who he reminds me of? I'm like, who? He goes, Henrik Zetterberg. And I was like, honestly, yeah, I could see that. Because Pettersson does everything so smooth and clean that he doesn't really have to like be all that physical, and very rarely does he do anything that you'd consider dirty at all. He's just a classy, talented hockey player, and I guess he really is like this generation's Henrik Zetterberg, you know?
You know, the interesting thing about this series in particular with Elias Pettersson is that he has not backed away from the physical play. Early on in his career, when he had that early concussion, there were questions as, is he another quote-unquote typical soft European player, right? Can he play the physical NHL game? Is he ever going to get adjusted to that? He's been in the corners. He's been roughing it up. He's been getting in the scrums because this series has gotten pretty physical. It's gotten pretty nasty.
Yeah.
These two teams don't like each other anymore. If they liked each other to start, they don't like each other anymore.
They're definitely not hanging out in the lobby anymore.
But he hasn't shied away from that. He's been involved. He's been in the corners. He hasn't shied away from the big hits, and he's been playing the brand of hockey that they expect from Elias Pettersson.
And I know JT Miller had a couple points last game when they reunited Pettersson with Besser and JT Miller, which had been their top line through most of the season. But with that being said, like, I don't know if it's just because, like, my memory of JT Miller is so tainted from his time in New York. And not that he was a bad player for us, but just because there was all that hype and he just never put it together. And I still feel like that's the problem with him is, like, there's a lot of hype and he's just not putting it together. Like, he's had a good year. Don't get me wrong. He had, like, 70-something points.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he rode shotgun with Elias Pettersson all year. Elias Pettersson was, lights out. But that being said, like, I think right now, like, what I'm seeing from JT Miller, like, I feel like he's trying too hard. You know what I mean? He's trying to play like that skilled game too much. He's trying to stick handle too much. He's trying to make too many cute little plays instead of just playing the hockey that they traded him for him to play, which is, straight line, big, strong hockey because he's a big kid. He's like 6'2", 220. Like, he's just supposed to go out there and just throw his weight around. Not just go out there and throw his weight around, but he's supposed to be a power forward.
He's supposed to be like a two-way, not like this fancy-dancy, like...
Yeah.
He's supposed to be, to borrow your phrase, he's supposed to be meat and potatoes.
Right. So, like, right now he's getting away from that. I think that's doing him, like, him in particular, it's doing a disservice to, but the team in general, I mean, is winning, so it doesn't really matter, I guess, right? But...
one thing that I thought was interesting in this series from the Minnesota Wild standpoint is Alex Stalock starts in Game 1, and he's played every single game.
Or is he on the bench?
To my knowledge, Dubnik's not hurt. Granted, I don't really follow the Minnesota Wild that much.
I mean, why would you?
Alex Stalock played really well in Game 1. He's played pretty well in the whole series.
He made that great save today on Bo Horvat. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, Horvat shot right at him, but...
The thing that I don't like about Stalock is there's a lot of rebounds. His rebounds come off so hard. He's not very good at controlling the puck.
I mean, I was talking about it the other day, and I put it this way: like, their starting goaltender is a backup goaltending reject from San Jose.
Yeah, and like, the funny part is, like, he's not playing bad, but you can see that there are parts of his game that are just not where they need to be.
No, yeah.
He's got a fantastic glove hand. He's really athletic. But every time a shot goes towards his pads, he's booting it right into the slot.
Oh, there's no rebound control. Dude, off his blocker, those things are getting punched right out into the middle. Like, he's not as good as Devin Dubnyk. And I think Devin Dubnyk's wildly overrated. And so I don't understand. I don't know. I think the biggest plus for Minnesota right now is that these young forwards are actually, like, playing well. I mean, Zach Parise is playing well, but that's what you'd expect out of Zach Parise. He's a playoff performer.
That's what you would hope for his contract.
Right. But the other thing is, like...
Well, to your point, Kevin Fiala's look really good.
Kevin Fiala's looked good. Alex Galchenyuk's looked pretty good. He hasn't... I know doesn't have a lot of points, but he's looked pretty good.
Well, he's buying into his new role.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask out of him.
I mean, I think the defense has looked pretty good, for the most part. I mean, Brodin, Spurgeon, and Dumba have all looked good. The big three, which is exactly what you'd want. I mean, Ryan Suter's also looked good. So their top four is all playing well. I don't know. I think Vancouver's just too much for them, honestly. What I think it is, like, Vancouver just matches up so well. There's just too much.
It's weird because, like, Vancouver is one of the younger teams in this playoff series, but they're also one of the only teams that I actually feel good about coming out of this series. Like, I think that Vancouver will win. I think Minnesota might be able to push it to a fifth game, but Vancouver's a better team, and I think they'll win the series.
Yeah.
And I feel good about them going forward. I think that they can make some noise in the round of 16. I mean, it also depends on who they match up against, because they're going to match up against a pretty tough team unless they pull the Golden Knights. If you match them up against the Avalanche, that's an unfortunately tough matchup. The Blues, the Stars, I think that's all pretty tough. But if you match them up against the Golden Knights, if they can stay in that Pacific Division, I think they could easily make it to the second round.
I mean, I don't like the Golden Knights as it is. I never have, so I really don't see.
I also just don't know what they want to do in net. But
yeah. I mean, you have Marc-Andre Fleury and you trade for Robin Leonard. Like, I don't get it.
Well, Fleury starts the entire exhibition game. Then Leonard starts game 1 of the round robin, and now Fleury's in game 2. Yeah, I don't know.
It's because it's Pete DeBoer, bro. Like, Pete DeBoer has literally no idea how to coach a hockey team. Like, I'm convinced he just, like, shows up and is like, all right, guys, I don't know what I'm doing, so, like, you guys just figure it out. You play well, we'll win games, you know? And then San Jose goes to a Stanley Cup final, and 2 years later, they're the worst team in the NHL. So, like, I didn't like Pete DeBoer in San Jose, in New Jersey. I don't like him in Las Vegas. It just doesn't...
I don't like him as a coach either. I don't really...
What does he do? Like, he can't. He literally can't get them over the hump. He can't get them to win the big one. He's lost 2 Stanley Cup Finals. 2. He's like...
and he had some teams that probably should have won.
I mean, that
some
Devils
Stanley
team
Cups.
was if health. Well, they weren't healthy, but like with Kovalchuk, probably honestly could have beat that LA Kings team. The LA Kings team was just white hot. That was the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a little off topic, but like we're also watching the Golden Knights play.
So, do you have any final thoughts about any of the play-in series?
I mean, I think Vancouver's gonna win. Chicago and Edmonton is by far the worst series of them all. And by worst, I mean it's like the worst quality of hockey I've seen. But like the games are fun because they're like
It's entertaining, but you're like, this is not high-level hockey.
this is not the best hockey league on earth. Like this is not what these guys look like. I don't know. I mean, it's great because like Showtime gets all that ice to do whatever he wants, but like at the same time, it's like, oh my god, I want to at least see somebody try to stop him.
I want to see a save every once in a while.
Yeah, or at least somebody make some sort of defensive stop, you know.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
I guess that'll kind of just wrap it up. The next episode is going to be, we're going to be doing it on Monday, right around 6 p.m. They're doing the Phase 2 draft of the lottery.
So we're going to be doing another live reaction like the last one, which was a lot of fun, I think.
And we'll be figuring out where Lafreniere is going, assuming that whatever team gets the first pick doesn't trade him away. Which there are some teams that could conceivably do that, but
That'd be a whole. Did we talk about that next week?
Well, more or less, we'll be seeing basically where Lafreniere is going. And we'll also be doing, obviously, a play-in round wrap-up, as at that time, all the series will be over.
And we're going to see whose brackets are dead and whose aren't. I mean, we haven't made our brackets yet, but we'll see whose predictions held up and whose didn't.
I'm 0 for 1, so
am I.
I'm 0 for 1, and a lot of the teams that I put in are down in series, so it's not looking too hot for a lot of my picks right now. But, yeah, so next episode, Monday, live reaction, figure out where Lafreniere is going. Play-in series wrap-ups, and then once again, we'll do a bracket building episode probably before the actual playoffs start.
So we probably have to do that next week. So we'll probably do 2 next week.
We'll do a couple episodes next week, and then as the playoffs continue, we'll just be doing our weekly content every week. We'll try to pick a day where, kind of like today, where maybe we can talk about games before they happen. But yeah, so maybe 2 episodes next week. Definitely weekly episodes thereafter as the playoffs continue. We want to wish everyone good health and staying safe. Obviously, keep doing what you guys got to do to stay safe. We hope everyone that's playing in the tournament stays safe. Want to send again well wishes to Jake Muzzin and everyone that was involved in that situation. And other than that, been having a blast now that hockey's back. Been watching like 6 games a day
every day. And listen, I've forced my girlfriend to sit through I don't know how many games over those 3 days she was here. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Obviously, would prefer a normal Stanley Cup situation, but this is honestly a ton of fun, and I've been having a blast with it.
Yeah, I really don't think that we're gonna have that issue of like the COVID Cup thing we were talking about, like the asterisk next to any names, because like this honestly is legitimate. Like they're playing real hockey.
It's a totally legitimate tournament at this point. I think how is that not
Big
net?
save Binner. Big save Binner.
So I want to thank you guys for watching, and like I said, stay tuned next week, couple eppies, and then after that we'll be doing our weekly stuff. So I want to thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.
Goodbye.
Where's my op?